There is a place in the Grand Canyon where the river bends so sharply that the world ahead disappears. The walls close in from 3,000 feet above, rust red and absolute, and the water between them moves with the quiet confidence of something that has never needed to explain itself to anyone. River guides call it the throat, not on any official map, just something passed between people who spend their lives reading the water. A name that means here, pay attention. Here, the river decides. On the morning of June 9th, the group that would later be interviewed by National Park Service rangers woke at this bend and made camp coffee in the low slant of early light. There were 12 of them, tourists from 4 states ranging in age from 23 to 67, a retired school teacher from Ohio, 2 brothers from Atlanta who'd been saving for this trip for 3 years, a couple from Seattle on what they'd told everyone was their second honeymoon, and a young woman named Delphine from Flagstaff who kept a journal and who would, in the weeks after, write down everything she remembered in a composition notebook with a green cover. Their lead guide was a 27-year-old man from Cody, Wyoming, named Cal Rutherford. He had been on the river since he was 19. He knew the Colorado the way other people know their own handwriting, not by studying it, but by being it, day after day, until the knowledge lived in his wrists and his spine and the back of his throat. He had run lava falls 17 times. He knew which rapids changed personality in high water and which ones stayed reliable. He could read the tongue of a rapid from 200 yards and tell you, without looking at a gauge, within a few hundred cubic feet per second, what the flow was. On day 1 of the trip, he'd helped a 67-year-old man with bad knees navigate a portage and carried his dry bag without being asked. On day 3, he'd spotted a garter snake sleeping in the shadow of a client's tent and relocated it before breakfast without making a scene. On day 5, he'd told the story of the river, all of it. The geology, the Powell expedition, the dam wars, the whole long human relationship with this canyon. Sitting cross-legged at the fire while the stars came out above the walls, and the group had listened the way people listen when they realize they are somewhere that matters. On day 6, just after 4 in the afternoon, Cal Rutherford said something to the other guide, a 24-year-old named Jesse, and within minutes, he was gone. The river swallowed him and gave nothing back. His body has never been found. Cal Rutherford grew up in Cody, Wyoming, which is the kind of place that produces either people who leave immediately and never look back, or people who understand from a very early age that they are exactly where they are supposed to be. Cal was the second kind. His father drove supply trucks, and his mother kept the books for a small hardware store on the main road through town. They were quiet people, not unhappy, just contained. They lived in a yellow-sided ranch house on the eastern edge of town, where the prairie begins to fold itself upward toward the Absaroka Range, and on clear days you could see the snow on the peaks from the kitchen window, even in July. Cal was the third of 4 children. His older brother Danny went to the Naval Academy, and then to a career in logistics and a house in Virginia Beach. His older sister Renee married a man who worked for the state and moved to Casper. His younger sister Mia was still in high school when Cal disappeared. She is the one who spoke to NPS investigators the longest. What people remember about Cal as a child is mostly physical. He was always moving, always finding the tallest thing in any landscape and climbing it, always locating the water and getting into it. He was 11 when he first kayaked the Shoshone River. He was 14 when he ran his first Class 4 rapid. He was 16 when he saw the Colorado River for the first time on a family trip to the South Rim, and stood at the overlook for 45 minutes while his family ate lunch in the parking lot and didn't go back up until his father physically came and got him. He looked at that river like he recognized it, his mother said, in a statement given to the park, like he'd been there before somehow. I remember thinking it was strange at the time. Now I think it was just him knowing. He applied to the University of Wyoming the same fall, but he deferred twice before he went. He spent the intervening time picking up work on river outfitter crews throughout the West, Green River, San Juan, the Upper Colorado. He was not unserious about school. He read constantly, carried paperback novels in the waterproof pockets of his gear bags, wrote long letters to his sister Mia when he was on the road. But the river was where his attention actually lived, and eventually the university stopped feeling like something he was postponing and started feeling like something that belonged to a different version of his life. He did eventually complete a degree in environmental studies, part-time, online, over 5 years. but by then he was already senior staff at River West Adventures out of Page, Arizona, and had been running guided trips on the Colorado through the Grand Canyon for 4 seasons. His colleagues described him as the best reader of water they'd ever seen, which in river guide culture is not a metaphor. Reading water is a technical skill, a practiced observation of surface patterns, boils, eddies, pour-overs, horizon lines, a constant decoding of what the river is doing, and more importantly, what it is about to do. People who are good at it develop a specific quality of attention. They are always slightly somewhere else, always looking at the thing beyond the thing in front of them. On the river, this made Cal exceptional. Off the river, it occasionally made him hard to reach. His last long-term relationship had ended 14 months before the trip. The woman's name was Kara, and she had been a paddling instructor at the same outfitter for 2 seasons before she left for a position in Oregon. The breakup was described by mutual friends as quiet but total. Cal didn't talk about it. He went back to work. In the months before the June trip, his supervisor at River West, a man named Dave Alcott, would later tell investigators that Cal had seemed solid, focused, maybe a little quieter than usual, but nothing that flagged anything for me. His physical logs were clean. His client reviews were among the highest on record for that season. He had been assigned as lead on the 8-day Grand Canyon run, specifically because of his track record with complex group dynamics. The group assembled in Page on the morning of June 4th, 12 clients, 2 guides, Cal and Jesse Vance, who was in his 2nd season. Jesse handled the gear raft and supported Cal on navigation. By all accounts, the first 5 days went exceptionally well. The weather was clean. The water level at Lee's Ferry was reading 16,000 cubic feet per second. Moderately high, powerful, but predictable for an experienced crew. They ran Horn Creek on day 3 without incident. They ran Crystal Rapid on day 4, one of the most technically demanding on the full river. And Cal ran the line so clean that the clients cheered from the shore. That evening, one of the clients, Tom Brennick, a 52-year-old engineer from Columbus, took a photograph of Cal standing at the edge of the firelight with a coffee cup, looking out at the river. Tom Brennick would later give this photograph to the NPS and then to Cal's family. In the photograph, Cal is relaxed, shoulders down, the cup resting in both hands. He is looking at the water. His face is in 3/4 profile, and the firelight catches the left side of his jaw. He looks entirely at ease. That photograph was taken approximately 18 hours before he disappeared. The morning of day 6 began the same as the others. Jesse was up first, as always. 5:15. Building the fire, heating water. Cal emerged from his tent around 5:45, and several clients later described him as normal, quiet, like always in the morning, but normal. He drank his coffee standing up, as was his habit. He checked the gear. He looked at the river. The group broke camp by 7:30. The plan for day 6 was to run a moderate stretch of water, no major rapids, mostly flat sections through the lower Granite Gorge, and camp near Pumpkin Spring at mile 213 by early afternoon. Pumpkin Spring is a natural travertine pool jutting from the canyon wall, orange-streaked and strange beautiful, shaped roughly like its name. The water in the pool is warm but toxic, high in arsenic and lead and copper from the geology above, and one of Cal's jobs on this stretch was to make sure no one waded in. The float went smoothly. Cal was at the front of the lead raft, reading the water, making the decisions. Jesse ran sweep. By 1:45, they were beached below Pumpkin Spring. Cal helped the group set up a loose afternoon camp, dry bags off, tents staged but not erected, coolers opened. He gave a brief natural history talk on the travertine formation while the group ate lunch in the shade. Delphine Marsh, the journaling client from Flagstaff, wrote in her notebook that afternoon, "Cal today talked about how the spring deposits a tiny amount of calcite with every drip of water, that the whole formation took 100,000 years to build, and that we were looking at time made visible." He said this casually, like it was just a thing he was saying. After lunch, around 3:30, the group dispersed for the afternoon break. Some clients napped. Tom Brennick and his wife walked downstream along the bank. The 2 Atlanta brothers swam in an eddy below camp. The retired school teacher, a woman named Barbara Owens, sat in a camp chair with a book. At approximately 3:55 p.m., Cal Rutherford approached Jesse Vance near the gear raft, which was beached on the gravel bar about 60 meters from the main camp. What was said between them is the hinge on which everything turns. Jesse Vance gave a formal statement to NPS Rangers on the evening of June 9th and a follow-up interview the following morning. His account is as consistent as it is frustratingly incomplete. He says Cal came to him with something on his mind. He says Cal's manner was off. Not alarming, not dramatic, just slightly different from usual, like he was deciding something. Jesse says Cal told him he needed to take some time, that he was going to step away for the afternoon. He said it calmly, the way he said most things. Jesse said he was distracted. A bungee cord on the gear raft had snapped and he was working on it, and he half turned to answer, said something like, "Okay, sure," and turned back to the raft. When he looked up a few minutes later, Cal was not there. Jesse did not immediately register this as unusual. Guides on multi-day trips do take breaks, do walk off by themselves. The canyon allows very limited movement. The walls come to the river's edge in this section, and there are no trails, but there are small benches of rock above the waterline, and it wasn't strange for Cal to find a quiet spot. Jesse figured he'd gone upriver a short distance. At 5:15, when the group was beginning to stir toward the dinner routine, Jesse realized Cal had not returned. He walked the bank for 100 meters in both directions. He called out. He climbed a low ledge above camp to get a longer sight line upriver. He saw nothing. At 6:30, he informed the group. He told them Cal had stepped away and wasn't responding to calls, and that he was going to radio it in. He kept his voice level. The clients, he would later say, went very quiet. He reached the NPS emergency dispatch at 7:03 p.m. Rangers arrived by motor raft from Diamond Creek, 12 miles downriver, at 9:40 that night. The initial ground search of the bank between mile markers 210 and 216 was conducted by headlamp and found nothing. No personal flotation device, no sandals, no sign of a slip or fall on the bank, no clothing, nothing in the water, nothing on the rocks. The river, as it had always done, said nothing. The search lasted 7 days. The National Park Service deployed river rangers and helicopter crews, volunteers, including guides from competing outfitter companies who heard the radio calls and turned their own trips around, covered 40 miles of river corridor over the first 72 hours. River West Adventures flew Dave Alcott in by helicopter on the morning of day 2. He walked the search area and spent an hour at the location where Cal was last seen, standing on the gravel bar and looking at the water. Cal's mother flew from Cody to Flagstaff on June 10th. She was met at the airport by a park liaison officer. His sister Mia, who was 21 by that summer, drove straight from Laramie and arrived 8 hours later, eyes already dry, which is how some people grieve. The family was not permitted to enter the canyon during the active search, which is standard protocol. They stayed in a motel in Flagstaff and received briefings every 12 hours. Cal's mother, whose name is Carol, sat in the motel room and kept the television off. She drank tea she didn't taste. She told the park liaison officer on the 3rd day, "He knows this river. He knows it better than I know my own house. If he wanted to come back, he would come back." She paused and then said very quietly, "That's the part I keep thinking about." The search teams found nothing. On day 4, a commercial kayaking group passing through reported seeing an orange dry bag floating against a boulder at mile 218, 5 miles below Pumpkin Spring. Rangers recovered it. It was not Cal's. It was a bag that had fallen from another trip 3 weeks earlier, logged in a separate incident report. On day 5, a helicopter crew photographed what appeared to be a boot print on a narrow shelf of rock at mile 214, 8 feet above the waterline. Rangers rappelled down to examine it. It was a smear of mud on the rock, not a print. The canyon's light plays tricks on the eye, even with experienced observers. On day 7, the active search was formally scaled back. The NPS case remains open. Cal Rutherford is listed on the National Missing and Unidentified Person System as missing, presumed drowned. No body has ever been recovered. 12 people watched the space where Cal Rutherford had been, and then was not. They did not watch him disappear in the way that phrase suggests. No one saw him step into the water. No one heard a sound. No one turned in time to see him fall. What they watched was the absence, the slow accumulation of an afternoon without him, the dinner that didn't begin, the fire that Jesse built alone, the silence that thickened as 1 hour became 2, and 2 became the radio call. In the weeks and months after, Several of the 12 gave public statements or spoke to journalists. Some went silent and stayed that way. Delphine Marsh published an essay in a small literary magazine in the fall of that year. She wrote, "We were so busy trying to make sense of the canyon, the scale of it, the age of it, all that gorgeous, inhuman permanence, that we were not paying enough attention to the human in our midst. I have thought about this every day since. I think about what Cal said about the calcite, about time made visible. I think about how he said it like it cost him nothing, like he was just giving it away, that knowledge, that way of seeing. And I think about how 3 hours later he was just gone. I don't think the canyon took him from us. I think the river did. And I think there's something in that distinction that I haven't finished understanding yet." Tom Brennick, who took the last photograph, gave a brief interview to an outdoor sports website in the following spring. He said, "I've run rivers, not at Cal's level, but I know the water. And what I keep thinking is, he would have known. If he went in the river, deliberately or not, he would have known exactly what to do. He had the skills, he had the experience, he had 17 lava falls runs in his body, and the water took him anyway. That's the hardest part for me. That skills aren't a guarantee, that the river doesn't care what you know." Barbara Owens, the retired school teacher, did not speak publicly. She sent a handwritten letter to Cal's mother, care of the NPS liaison office, which was forwarded 6 weeks after the search. What she wrote in it is not public record. Jesse Vance left river guiding at the end of that season. He works now for a landscape firm in Sedona. He has not given media interviews. He did speak once to a river safety researcher at Northern Arizona University, and in that conversation he said, "I've been through that conversation 10,000 times. What he said, what I said, what I should have said. I don't know if I missed something. I don't know if any answer would have changed anything. But I know that when I turned back to that raft, I thought everything was fine, and I have to live with the fact that I thought that." There are 3 theories, and none of them have been ruled out. The first is misadventure. The river at this section, while calmer than the major rapid zones, is not gentle. There are shelves of Vishnu basement rock at the water's edge that become slick when the water is high. A misstep, a lost footing, a momentary imbalance, the kind of thing that happens 1,000 times on a multi-day trip without consequence, and once with total consequence. If Cal went into the water here, the current below Pumpkin Spring accelerates into a bend, and a person in the water, even a strong swimmer, even without a PFD, can be pulled under a ledge, trapped in a hydraulic, carried into water too turbulent to escape. The Colorado in the lower Granite Gorge does not return people. It has the oldest rock in the canyon, 1.7 billion years of Precambrian schist, and it keeps what it takes. The second theory is medical. Several people who knew Cal noted, in retrospect, that he had seemed quieter than usual in the final days of the trip. Not distressed, not obviously unwell, just internally focused in a way that, viewed through the lens of what happened, takes on weight. The Grand Canyon environment, extreme heat, physical exertion, high ultraviolet exposure, dehydration, is one of the most physiologically stressful in North America. Heat stroke, hyponatremia, cardiac events, neurological episodes. The canyon medical literature is full of cases where experienced, fit adults were felled by things they didn't know were coming. If Cal experienced something sudden, a syncope event, a cardiac arrhythmia, a neurological episode near the water's edge, and went in before he could call for help, the outcome would have been identical to a misadventure fall. The third theory is the one no one wants to say, and everyone eventually says. Cal had, in the preceding 14 months, ended a relationship, moved between 3 temporary housing situations, and worked without a significant break. His output was impeccable. His reviews were perfect. He was, to all outward appearances, exactly what he had always been. But the people who knew him best, his sister Mia, his friend and fellow guide Jake Sorensen, his colleague Dave Alcott, describe, when pressed, a man who had learned to wear his composure like equipment, who knew how to function at full capacity while things happened below the surface that he didn't discuss. Mia Rutherford, in her final interview with NPS investigators, said, "I asked him in April how he was doing, and he said, 'I'm good, I'm on the water.' And I thought that was an answer. I think now that it was the whole answer, that the water was the only place he felt like himself, and that everything else was what he was managing." What happened at Pumpkin Spring on the afternoon of June 9th is not known and may never be known. What is known is this: a man stepped away from a gravel bar in one of the most remote and beautiful places in North America, and the river that had been the center of his life for 8 years took him and kept him. Whether he fell and the water caught him, or the water was the thing he walked toward, the result is the same. He is in the canyon. He is in the rock and the water. He is, as Delphine Marsh wrote, time made visible. The Colorado River runs 1,450 miles. In the Grand Canyon alone, it drops 2,200 feet in elevation over 277 river miles, through walls that rise nearly a mile above its surface and compress it into a corridor where the scale makes everything human feel briefly, profoundly accurate. Cal Rutherford knew all of this. He had been saying it to clients for 8 years. He had been standing at fires and pointing upward at the stratigraphy and explaining what the rock remembered and what the water remembered and what it meant to be briefly, physically present in a place this old. He said it like it cost him nothing, one of his clients wrote. She meant it as a compliment. The more you look at it, the more you wonder if she was also right about the cost. In the fall of the same year, River West Adventures held a memorial gathering on the bank of the Colorado at Lee's Ferry, the put-in point for Grand Canyon trips, the last place you stand on ordinary ground before the canyon takes you. A dozen guides came. Dave Alcott spoke. Jesse Vance drove from Sedona. Cal's mother and sister flew in from Wyoming. They released a wooden box into the current, not a coffin. Something small, handmade, filled with things that had belonged to Cal. A paperback novel with a bent cover, a piece of schist he'd kept on his desk, a photograph of the Absaroka Range in winter, a note from Mia that no one read before it went into the box. The box was on the water for 11 seconds before the current took it. The guides watched it go. Cal's mother watched it go. Mia watched it go with her arms crossed over her chest, not weeping, just watching with the fixed attention of someone committing a thing to permanent memory. Dave Alcott said, after, "This river gave him everything he had. I've been trying to be angry at it for what it took. I can't get there." Cal wouldn't have been able to get there either. In the spring of the following year, the NPS updated its guidelines for commercial outfitters on the Colorado. More stringent check-in protocols for guides during afternoon breaks, mandatory buddy system procedures in remote sections, enhanced training on heat-related medical emergencies in the Grand Canyon corridor. The guidelines didn't mention Cal by name, but the guides who knew him know where those changes came from. River West Adventures renamed their annual guide training award the Rutherford Citation. The first year it was given, it went to a 22-year-old from New Mexico named Serena Voss, who had talked a panicking client through a Class 4 swim on the Salmon River without once raising her voice. She had never met Cal Rutherford, but she had read about him. "I read about how he ran Crystal on day 4 of his last trip, and the clients cheered from shore," she said when the award was announced. "I think about that sometimes. Doing your best possible work on the day before your last day and not knowing it was. Somewhere in the lower Granite Gorge, at a bend in the river that guides call the Throat, the Colorado moves the way it has always moved, without consultation, without apology, without pause for the human calendar. The walls above are 3,000 feet of layered time, Kaibab limestone at the rim, Hermit shale below it, Supai sandstone, Red Wall limestone, Muav limestone, Bright Angel shale, and at the very bottom, the oldest and darkest, the Vishnu schist, 1.74 billion years old, cracked and veined with pink Zoroaster granite, pressed into the riverbanks like a signature. Cal knew the names of all of it. He knew which formations held water and which shed it. He knew which ledges were stable and which were undercut. He knew the river the way other people know the faces of people they love. Delphine Marsh still has the green-covered composition notebook. She has never published the full entries. She did, in a second essay, written 2 years after the trip, quote one more line she wrote on the afternoon of day 6, the afternoon it happened, before she knew anything was wrong. Cal pointed at the travertine and said, "Some things just keep becoming themselves, very slowly, over a very long time. I wrote this down because I wanted to remember it. I didn't know then that I would remember everything." In Cody, Wyoming, Cal's mother, Carol, still lives in the yellow-sided ranch house on the eastern edge of town. On clear days, she can see the snow on the Absaroka peaks from the kitchen window, even in July. She keeps the last photograph Tom Brennick took, Cal at the edge of the firelight, looking at the river, looking entirely at ease, in a frame on the kitchen windowsill. Every morning she makes coffee. She looks at the photograph. She looks out at the mountains. The river, somewhere very far away and very close, keeps moving. Cal Rutherford, born September 3, 1987, Cody, Wyoming. Missing since June 9, 2015. Grand Canyon National Park, Colorado River, mile 213. He has not been found.
And that's where the story ends, but the mystery remains. What do you think happened to Cal Rutherford that day on the Colorado River? Share your thoughts and theories in the comments below. If you enjoy true disappearance cases and real-life mysteries, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss a new investigation. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next case.